I'm Sandy Ray, member of Central Philadelphia meeting, but also clerk of the yearly meetings Middle East Collaborative. And on behalf of Central Philadelphia's Peace and Social Concerns Committee and also the Middle East Collaborative, I want to welcome David Gray back in the States for the second time, but the first time that he and I could meet today because we were otherwise out of town 2.5 years ago, I think. Yeah. So I had lived in Lebanon 2 years, long before David was part of Brummana High School.
There seems to be hearing problems.
So the folks on Zoom aren't hearing?
No, you're not.
Yeah. Yeah, Tony's
It's not a text.
We don't have.
Oh, there.
Okay.
Oh, there
We're working on it.
Okay.
Oh, there's thumbs up for that.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay,
no,
the sound is better.
There's Sandy. There's Sandy, they can see us.
Okay.
All seems well.
So David Gray, thank you so much for being part of this, and we're glad to welcome you to Central Philadelphia Friends meeting and also to Philadelphia and to the United States. So take it away.
Thank you very much indeed, Sandy, for inviting me to give this presentation today. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. Actually, I was here last night. I came to an event at which a lady, a Quaker, was giving a talk about her time in Vietnam, and it was about how she stayed after the Americans left. This resonated with me. I felt I could relate to this very well because I decided to stay in Lebanon, and that's where I'm going to live for the rest of my life. And the story I tell today will have something to do with that. Some of you I may have spoken to before, 2.5 years ago. Some of you may never have heard of me or of Brummana or know very much about Lebanon at all. In which case I'm going to give a kind of broad brush description of where I live and what I do in Brummana High School, which is one of the only 2 Quaker schools in the Middle East. The other one you're probably more familiar with, Ramallah on the West Bank, for geopolitical reasons. But in recent years, Brummana has gone through a series of catastrophes of a geopolitical, geographical nature. Our economy has collapsed, and that's why I came out here 2.5 years ago, because I couldn't pay the staff, and that was a serious problem for any school. So I'm going to talk to you about that today. Just before I started speaking, I got a text message to say that the Israelis bombed Dahir this morning. This is a war that's supposed to be over, but they bombed Dahir, which is a suburb of Beirut, because they say they found a building that was full of weapons and ammunition, and I've seen the pictures of the building exploding. So all I want to say really is that we continue to live in a war zone, and I think the word that I would use, particularly to describe Lebanon, is unstable. There is no sense of certainty at all. And one thing I do want to say before I start is that I didn't really realise this until I went out to live there, living in the United Kingdom, just as you live in the United States. But the fact of the matter is that countries like this, in spite of what you're going through now, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and a few other countries are exceptions. Most of the world is unstable, volatile, uncertain, and most people in these countries suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome. This is not something exceptional, it's just the way it is. So, I'm going to begin. Are you sitting comfortably?
So far.
Then I'll begin. Lebanon today is a small, insecure, vulnerable, defenseless country. There are no air defenses. If the Israelis decide to bomb or invade our airspace, they do so with impunity. There is no option for us. except just to get on with life. Our neighbours are hostile and unreliable, Israel and Syria. Who needs enemies when you've got neighbours like them? Yet, they are a people who, although divided into many religious and political affiliations, are enormously resilient. There are 18 religious denominations in Lebanon, and there are 40 political parties. Think of them like shells. You retreat into your shell, whether you're Sunni or Shia or Druze or Orthodox Christian or Maronite, when there is trouble. There's your family. The family belong to a certain sect. There's the sect. And then there's kinship, the name of the family. And you protect yourself inside that. And that's one of the ways in which the Lebanese survive. Nothing disrupts their lives, although everything touches their lives. Everybody suffers from post-traumatic stress syndrome, but almost all survive and carry on. Really, we have no choice, any more than the people of Gaza have a choice. If you don't get killed, you're alive. And you do everything you can to minimise and reduce your suffering and adapt and be versatile, because otherwise life is completely unbearable. This is a part of the world, and I'm talking about Lebanon specifically here, which is constantly subject to invasion, occupation, conflict, natural disasters. If we don't have an economic collapse, we have the Beirut blast, which displaced 300,000 people in 2020. If we don't have a revolution, we have a war. There's conflict everywhere and all the time. No sooner do we close one door than another one opens in front of us, confronting us with new problems. Lebanon is also the most commonly named country in the Bible, over 45 times. Indeed, the town of Byblos, about 20 miles from where I live, also known as Jbeil, is where we get the word Bible from. It is home to the great pre-Christian trading civilization, the Phoenicians, who largely shaped and formed the alphabet from which we shape and form our speech today. A great people. And Lebanon also holds a vital geopolitical location between Europe and Asia. Everybody wants a bit of Lebanon. The people are perhaps, not surprisingly, very good at modern languages, and ancient languages for that matter. Almost all educated Lebanese speak Arabic, French, and English fluently, often in the same sentence. Hi, kifak, ça va bien. If you visit Beirut, you'll find in the airport t-shirts and hoodies with the 3 languages on them. So even before you get out of the airport, you'll be learning a bit of those 3. They put us to shame, really. I mean, an awful lot of people in the West struggle with their own language, let alone learning a foreign language. The Lebanese are great travellers by necessity and by virtue of their flair for business, for salesmanship, and for interpersonal relations. They can be enormously annoying and frustrating at times. They're definitely the most quarrelsome people I have ever lived with, but they're the most lovable as well. They're warm, they're big-hearted, and because everybody goes through these awful experiences, we share our suffering together and comfort each other. And they are blessed with great potential and enormous talent. Yet at the same time, they are oppressed by powers and matters that are beyond their control. That is where the resilience comes from. Often they realise there's nothing we can do. We just have to put up with it patiently, and they do. Education is their great escape, but equally it is their fulfillment. Only 20% of Lebanese children attend government-run schools because there is no government infrastructure in Lebanon. It's all private sector.
Now,
So it's,
I mean, right now for like,
I'll carry on. It's really sink or swim. 80% of children in Lebanon, therefore, are educated privately. They have to pay for their education. But what's interesting is that all Lebanese, whether they are street sweepers or billionaires, aspire to giving their children a top quality education. And indeed they would and do sell their shirts off their backs to acquire it. Education fundamentally gives hope for prosperity, an escape from poverty, a chance to make a difference in the world for yourself, for your family, for your community, for your country. It's also a way of conferring dignity on people who have lost everything or who have nothing. If you can read and write, if you can express a quadratic equation, if you can say, I've read a great work of literature, you are distinguished from the animals in the street. And the Lebanese have suffered hugely and actually have used education to forge a future for themselves. The other thing that education does is it gives hope. Hope for a just, honest democracy. In a country unusual in the Middle East, which is a democracy, albeit a highly corrupt one. Schools, unfortunately, are affiliated closely with religious or political parties. They're strictly doctrinaire, and they impose particular points of view and receive knowledge. You're not expected to think for yourself. You're expected to pass a test or an exam. For the parents of children in such schools, whether they're Sunni schools or Catholic schools or whatever denomination they are, education is a product, a grade, a means to an end, and the end is higher education and university. Brummana High School is different. It breathes freedom through its spacious, natural environment, its attitudes, and its Quakerly values. We have a holistic education which turns out people, human beings, people who have empathy and sympathy, and who share their common humanity, rather than people who emerge with grades. A grade is a passport to the next level of education or a job. It is no more than that. What matters is listening and learning and sharing. The school is multi-faith. We have people from every one of the 18 denominations and every one of the political affiliations. It's multi-socio-economic, and our holistic liberal philosophy of education is based on 4 Quaker values: respect for self and others, tolerance of the views, beliefs and faiths of others, peaceful resolution of problems which may be local or global, and equality. We are all equal in the eyes of God. I actually think possibly that's in your Bill of Rights, funnily enough. I went to Independence Hall the other day for the first time and was so impressed. By the way, don't despair of your country. America is a wonderful place, and it's only recently that we foreigners have begun to realise it with the disappearance of things like US aid, because we suddenly realise what soft power has done for poor countries and inadequate countries in the world. You're a great people. Don't despair. Don't give up. And it's a great privilege for me to be here today. Our Quaker values cross religious and cultural barriers, and they are a means of educating the children, the 1,300 children who come to our school from the age of 3 until 18. They grow up with a sense of value for themselves and the value of other people. And we can send them out into the world to do good work, to serve society, not just their own ends. Children at Brummana High School celebrate freedom of thought, independence of idea, and they celebrate difference and learn about each other as a matter of interest, not of contention. We build bridges, we don't blow them up. I want to mention two aspects of school life which for me are very important and are indicative of the kind of education we provide. We are very big in something called the Model United Nations programme. You may or may not be familiar with it. It's done all over the world, and it's like a microcosm of the UN. It's a game, really, and children like games. How it works is that we have about 300 students involved in this, and they meet 2 or 3 times a week, and they learn the art of public speaking, they learn how to carry out research, they learn how to project themselves and how to listen to others. Every now and then, every month or so, there's a conference at a school in Lebanon or a university, and they take part competitively. The idea is that you debate one of the world's great problems. It might be world peace, or it might be clean water, or it might be carbon neutral emissions. And what they do is they're given a country, and they have to research the history, geography, culture, politics, religious affiliations, etc. of that country, and then decide how that country would debate the global issue. So, you might be Iceland, you might be Namibia, you might be the United States, you might be Canada, you might be France. And in this way, they come to debate and they work out, through discussion, through debate, through committee, what the answers to these apparently insoluble problems might be. And they do so by peaceful means. And at the end of the day, there are prizes awarded to the best speakers, the best diplomats, etc. But what matters to me is that this is about children learning to understand each other, to understand other countries, other cultures, other peoples, and how they might come to any subject from the perspective that is alien to them. This way, we build empathy, we build understanding, and we build assertive peacemaking. And that's important. We also have a community service program. Now, this will be very familiar to you in the United States. I'm sure most schools do this kind of thing. But it's not necessarily common in a place like Lebanon. The Lebanese are individuals. As I said before, they're in their own shells. They're not community or society based. There isn't a sense of public service that you might expect here or in Europe. So we have to teach them that. And all our students at our school are required to complete 200 hours of community service in order to graduate. That might be reading to younger children. It might be helping the disadvantaged and the disabled in the town of Brummana. There are lots of ways in which you can commit yourself to other people. But again, it's important. However, as with everyone and every institution in Lebanon, we all suffer from the same cancer, the daily unpredictability of life. When I get up at 3 or 4 or 5 in the morning, I don't know if the school will open, for whatever reason. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But the one certainty of life is its uncertainty. In my last visit to the US, to Quaker communities I did not know, and where little was known about Brummana, or indeed about the country, Lebanon was in economic collapse. The school was bankrupt, and I asked for help to pay our staff, who having earned $2,000 per month, were reduced to $10 per month. It's no exaggeration to say that your generosity and understanding almost certainly saved the school, for two reasons. Partly through the donations you made, whether it was $10 or $25,000, and partly by example to others who could do more. Because when I went back to Lebanon, there were certain people, as always happens in a collapse, who benefited from the collapse. And I was able to go to them and say, look, people on the other side of the world who don't know me from Adam, who've never heard of Brummana and barely know that Lebanon is not in the United States. I met someone who didn't know that the other day. These people had faith and trust in me and in the work that the school is doing. And they put their hands in their pockets. And we all need to do that. And the school survived. The collapse, the economic collapse, is still with us, as are the poor. But the economy of the private sector generally in Lebanon is better, and the school is flourishing on the whole. Teachers are now earning $1,400 per month, 70% of what they were earning in 2019, and on the whole they're happy. It's the nature of the Lebanese, it's their inner toughness. They accept it. It takes time to get back to where we were. Now we have a president, we have a prime minister, we have a government of technocrats, one of whom I may say is an old scholar, a former student of Brummana High School. He's the Minister for Transport and Public Works. I went to see him 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I said, why are you doing this? And he said that for the next couple of years, I've given up any kind of salary, and I'm going to clean out the corruption in this ministry. And I'm going to make sure that we have a public transport system that will work and that public works get done on time. A breath of fresh air. I said, why are you doing this? He said, don't forget, the school motto is I serve, and that's why I'm doing it. I want to give back to my country. That's one of the important purposes for me of Brummana High School. It's teaching young people to give back. It's not I, me, and myself. Life is not a solo effort. It's a team game. And we have to learn that, and we have to teach the students that. Fayez Hassani, the new Minister for Public Transport and Public Works, is clearly aware of that from his education. So, there is hope for better days, in spite of the fragile ceasefire which has succeeded war, our most recent affliction. And at this point, Maestro, we're going to watch a video.
Oh boy.
It's not too long, don't worry. Brummana High School is 150 years old. It has stood the test of time and is the last of 6 establishments founded in the area since the inception of the Quaker mission in 1873. It is vital that it continues to survive. Never have its values of respect, of tolerance, and of peaceful resolution been more important than in this time of war. Children fall asleep to the sound of bombing, and they wake up to the buzzing of drones. But school goes on, as it must. It is our peaceful act of defiance, and a beacon of hope for the future, for the people of this beleaguered country. God willing, we shall prevail.
During its long history, Brummana High School went through several difficult periods. The mission was able to continue thanks to the generosity of its friends and supporters of its aims and ethos. The current war is more devastating than anything that happened in the past. Destruction of entire neighborhoods, including civilian houses and companies, was never seen in this ferocity. Many of our parents and staff have lost their homes and businesses. It is the school's duty to support them to continue their children's education, to rekindle their hope.
Lebanon has many treasures, and thanks to some good Quaker ancestors, Ramallah High School is one of them. Anyone who spent time at BHS will tell you just what a special place it is, perhaps because the values it instills are at its heart. This wonderful school nurtures kindness, curiosity and courage, and helps equip its students for a life of peaceful coexistence in a complex and conflicted world. Today's students are tomorrow's good ancestors, and when Lebanon is recovering from this terrible war, the old scholars of BHS will be there to serve and to make a difference.
Our students are facing the Lebanon School during wartime. This unfortunate fact raises a lot of anxiety and fear among our kids. The students are struggling to concentrate on their work, and the majority of them come to school in the morning feeling very sleepy due to the sleepless and restless nights they've been having.
As a teacher, my main goal is to support the students. But because of the ongoing war, many of them have left the country, and the others continue to live in a lot of fear and anxiety. However, I continue to try to support them, because in the end, we shall prevail.
As we are going through tough times in Lebanon, Brummana High School is trying to navigate the ongoing conflict. The counseling team is providing a listening ear, some strategies and tips on how to diffuse stress, and some resources in order to maintain social and emotional balance and well-being.
Countless students are facing the heartbreaking reality of an interrupted education as economic hardship and political instability shatter their dreams of a better education. Lebanon's current crisis leaves families unable to afford school fees, causing these hopeful children's bright futures to be dimmed by forces beyond their control.
Imagine going to sleep, not knowing whether you'll be able to make it to the next day. Imagine not being able to see your family, friends, and relatives for months. Every night, I wake up to the sound of shattering glass, sonic booms, and bombs, not knowing if I'll ever be able to move on.
We are going through extremely tough times. And now, on top of our daily challenges that we have been facing for the last few years, from losing our businesses to the bank's life savings, we are in a war zone. At the personal level, we have moved from Beirut to Bummana, and it hasn't been easy on my 3 boys. However, this much applies again.
Thank you, Maestro. I find it very difficult to watch that, actually, having lived through it. And as I said, the Israelis have just bombed again this morning. But we have no choice. The war was an interesting example of the role education can play. The bombing was relentless at night and in the early morning particularly. And we would wake up each day to the infernal buzzing of drones plotting their next raid. I found that particularly unsettling. These bees in the sky, incessant and loud. And you felt watched. You never quite knew what was going to happen next, where and when. But we learned to calibrate risk when going to the shops or into Beirut. A kind of cost-benefit analysis, if you like. Some of my staff lost family members, homes, businesses, but they all came to school every day, and many risked their lives daily to do so. I admired them. They were fantastic. You may have noticed on the video the number of times expressions like, "we shall prevail," "the sun will rise again." There's hope in these peaceful people who know that war and conflict will end and they will carry on. School was a haven of peace throughout the war, of normality, of work routines, of the laughter of children, of the business of peace. We opened every day. Parents, children, colleagues thirsted for it. I never knew school could be so popular. We never had better attendance, 97%. Astonishing. Every day. Until the war was over, then it dropped back a bit. Keeping open was our quiet, peaceful act of defiance against the violence going on around us. My colleagues were quietly brave, calm, composed. And I took courage from them. I'd never lived in a war before, I didn't know how I would be. But I had this responsibility and I couldn't walk away from it. But I found myself very calm because everybody around me was just carrying on with their lives. With determination, peacefully, quietly.
That's right.
We carried on, and the children had more important things to do than to heed the conflict. Peaceful activity distracted them. And for my staff, whom sometimes I had been very critical of, in the words of Winston Churchill, the great UK wartime leader, this was their finest hour. And I say that with the deepest of feelings. I still teach. I've always taught as a school principal. I think it reminds you of why the school exists. It's about children and about teaching and learning. And it helps me understand my mission in life strategically by actually teaching day in, day out to 1 or 2 classes. I was teaching A Midsummer Night's Dream by Shakespeare, which you may be familiar with, and in fact there's been a production of it recently in Philadelphia. A class of 16-year-olds. I had the children arranged in a horseshoe shape with me in the middle so that we could have debate and discussion. And I said to a girl called Yasmina, "Yasmina, in your opinion, do you think that love triumphs over the law in A Midsummer Night's Dream?" At that moment, there was a huge explosion outside the window, another bombing raid, and Yasmina jumped the height of herself in shock. I said to her, "Are you all right?" She said, "I'm fine. Mr. David, love triumphs over the law. Love always triumphs, as Theseus points out." I thought, well, if there's a lesson in that. The bomb had dropped, put it aside, love is what triumphs. I've got my notes in the wrong order. And then, just last week, just before I came here, I was having a meeting with a boy called Matthew, who was worried about his progress. He's got big exams coming up. So he came to my office and we had a conversation. And at the end of the conversation, I said to him with some satisfaction, "We covered a lot of texts this year, Matthew, haven't we?" And he looked at me with a proud smile on his face. He said, "Yes, we have. And the war too." And it was his way of saying, in spite of everything, we've come through. We've got it all done. And I thought, again, that is an important point. Now this part I want to finish with, and I'm going to finish my talk, with 4 journeys, all of which I took, during and after the war. And I'll draw a conclusion afterwards. They tell you a lot about Lebanon and about education in wartime and about the value of a Quaker education. The first journey was to my son's wedding. My son got married right in the middle of a war. He's my youngest child. I realised he would not forgive me if I didn't go to the wedding. He got married in St Andrews in Scotland. So I had to work out how I would get there and how long I would have to be away from Lebanon for. I decided on 2 routes. The first one via Cyprus. I would get an aeroplane from Larnaca and fly to London. But the problem with that is I would have to get a boat from Lebanon across the Mediterranean to Cyprus first. I booked a ticket on the boat. It was for 12 people, but I knew there'd probably be 30 or 40 on board because it was very difficult to get out of the country. At the same time, I could fly from Beirut, from the airport, because the airport was still open. Only one airline flying in and out, Middle Eastern Airlines, of course, the Lebanese airline, fantastic. They carried on throughout the war amidst all the bombing. But in order to fly from Beirut, I would have to travel through Dakhla, which is the area they bomb today. So there was a risk there. So I had to weigh it up. It was the risk of drowning, which I thought was pretty unlikely, but it could happen, against perhaps being hit on the way to the airport. In the end, I got a ticket at the last minute from Beirut, the last ticket on the flight. And I got a taxi and I travelled across Beirut and it was fine. The airport was in complete darkness, although the duty-free was still open. Lebanese mercantilism was alive and well, and we flew safely to London. Lesson learned? Always have a plan B. Just as the Lebanese do have every day throughout their lives. What you plan may not be possible, therefore you have to have an alternative. The second journey was the return from my son's wedding, which I may say was a very happy event, as these things should be. When we came into land, the Israelis were bombing. They were bombing Uzai, which is a suburb next to Dakhla, right next to the airport. As we landed, there were orange flames in the sky, the airport windows blew out, but the calmness of the pilots was unbelievable. You'd think they were landing an aircraft on a calm summer's day for a fete or something like that. And yet the situation was absolutely desperate. Lesson learned? Nothing will defeat our peaceful lives. They carried on. And that was a great act. Throughout the war, people were able to travel. Didn't matter what people were doing to us, we weren't going to give in. The third time was in March, after the war had ended. And I had been in Dubai for a conference of our Old Scholars Association. And many of the old scholars from the old days had come from the Gulf, from Saudi, Kuwait, the Gulf states, and so on. And they were all meeting there, and I was there to report on the state of the school, how things were going, and of course to ask them what they would fundraise for us. Because we are always in need of that. Anyway, the day I flew back was the day of Hassan Nasrallah's funeral. Hassan Nasrallah, if you aren't aware, was the leader of Hezbollah, and they delayed his funeral. The Israelis had targeted him from the beginning. They delayed his funeral for months until they felt it would be safe to hold. Many of the people who were at the conference had delayed their flights till the next day, the Monday. But I didn't have any choice because I had a school to run and I need to be there. As we were coming into land at Beirut Airport, something happened. The whole aircraft started shaking and there were sounds like rubber bands. And we thought we had been hit by Hezbollah at the time of the funeral and were awaiting in great fear imminent destruction. However, at that point, on the line came the pilot who said, Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming into land. Nothing to worry about, we've just been struck by lightning. And we all breathe the great sigh of perspective is everything. Lesson learned, we cannot deny that all of this affects our mental well-being. And I, just like Lebanese, suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome, because that's what happens when you live in this kind of volatile, uncertain region. Suppress your feelings and get on with life, which of course you have to do. And then I was ready to come to the US on the 17th of April. I was due to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to get a flight from Beirut. I was all ready. It was 9 o'clock the previous evening, and there was a massive explosion. So, what do? Well, of course, we immediately get on WhatsApp, and we start exchanging texts, all of us together, friends, colleagues, etc. Go on social media, see what's happened, what's the truth of the matter, are the roads blocked, have people been killed, who's hit who, etc. I still don't know what the explosion was. I left at 3 in the morning and I came here. Lesson learned, share information, help each other, carry on, go to sleep. Tomorrow's another day. Now, when I came here last, and I'm coming to the end, you'll be relieved to know. When I came here last, I kind of had this idea that I was coming to save the school because we were in dire straits. The school reserves had been reduced to nothing by the collapse of the economy. The staff weren't being paid. We literally had starving people. We had to do all kinds of things, not just to keep the school going, but to keep ourselves going. I literally begged, really, here. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that now. But you responded magnificently, and as I explained earlier, we were able to pay the staff and keep the school going, which was fantastic. But shortly after that, other things happened, and I realised there's just a kind of concatenation of catastrophes happening in Lebanon. It's an unstable country, and therefore no sooner has one gone than another has arrived. And I realised you can't go to other people every few months and ask them for money to keep the operation of the school going. And so we sat down together, and instead we said, what actually we need is an endowment fund. We need to build up capital which will generate income that will sustain the school forever. There's a very good example of this, Harvard. Harvard, which has threatened, I don't know if it's happened yet, with the removal of federal subsidies and funds, has an enormous endowment which has been built up very wisely over many years. It generates about $2.5 billion a year. That's the income or the interest on the capital investment. I'd be happy with 2.5 million actually. But now they might just have to use it. Because an endowment in good days, you can provide financial aid for students, you can put up new buildings, you can engage in new research, but in hard times it keeps your institution alive. And that's why it's important. It is a counter to instability. It preserves an institution that is threatened by all kinds of things like our own one. And so what we're in the process of doing now is building up, gradually, a fund that will allow us to survive in the long term. You may ask the question, and I'll predict this rather than wait for you to ask it, is there hope for Lebanon and for Brummana High School, given the uncertainties that I've described, which carry on? Well, I think there is. During the war, we had 7,000 displaced people in Brummana, in the town of Brummana. They were all Shia, and Brummana is predominantly Christian. And there was a lot of worry and tension in the area that what happened in the Civil War, which ended in 1990, might happen again. The Shia had all come from southern Lebanon, where the Israelis were bombing very heavily. And there are about 10,000 people in Brummana, so it almost doubled. There was no trouble. There was no tension. At school, we collected bedding, mattresses, non-perishable foodstuffs, and we distributed these with the children and the teachers to 7 towns in the Meccan region, including Brummana, throughout the war. We made friends. We established good relations. It wasn't just us. It wasn't just Bummana High School, it was the people in the community. They looked after each other. So I found great hope in that. People don't have to fight each other. And when suffering is common to us all, we share and we help each other. Brummana High School itself is 152 years old. Its values, its liberating education, its persistence in the face of malevolent forces are the beacon of light which must go on shining in the periods of darkness which periodically Lebanon endures. And the young people will rebuild the country and all our hopes tomorrow. I am committed. What matters in life is commitment to something you believe in. I sold my house in Scotland. I bought an apartment in a little town called Beit Mary in Lebanon. And there I will live and there I will die. This is a place where with my knowledge and experience I can contribute something. After many, many years, I have found my métier. I have found my purpose in life.
Yeah.
And it's all about peaceful resolution. It's all about teaching young people how to live good lives, how to share with others, and how to promote a prosperous, peaceful society. Thank you for listening.